Good evening and welcome to this Casa and Ganashot Dialogues, a joint podcast and joint discussion on Iran war. And today our topic for discussion will be what has India learned. And we're going to see what India has learned over the past 2 weeks plus. After all, we are into the third week already of this war. And to join me in this discussion, I have with me General Gautam Moorthy, General B.K. Sharma, and General Raj Shukla. And at the outset, I'd like to give a special word of welcome to General B.K. Sharma, who's on our platform for the first time. Uh, Especially considering the fact that he spent 14 years at the United Service Institute of India, and he for 6 years of that he was the director. He is the top man. He's gone all over the world. He's represented India in many places, and of course, we've known each other right from the time when we were majors. And of course, on my right, I have General Raj Shukla, who's fresh off a ANI podcast on the use of drones, technology, and all in the way India has to progress, with special reference to the Iran war. Right? We are now in the third week of Iran war. A lot of things have happened. Whether you call it the technology, whether you call it, many things. And there's a huge learning curve for us. Every day I do a podcast, in the morning, as part of my update on everyday progress of the way this whole story is going. I learn something or the other. And I'm sure all my colleagues who are here, who are more learned colleagues, have their own wealth of experience which they've gained from this. I mean, it's an interplay of what's happening on ground and the wealth of their experience, and that's what we're going to talk. So what we're going to do is, I'll request each one of you to start with starting from General Gautam Moorthy, followed by General B.K. Sharma, and then General Raj Shukla. Spend about 5 to 6 minutes to give your assessment of where the current situation is. And once we get to the next thing, we'll get to the next thing as to what India has learned from all this so far. And when you give your assessment, I would be grateful if you could give it from an Indian perspective rather than from any other perspective, and what we as Indians, our own perspective about this whole war, right? Uh, of course, these are the days when people don't call wars as wars. They call it as special operations and conflicts and all that. But this is a proper war which is heading into its third week and full blast. With this, I'll request General Gautam Moorthy, sir, your views on this. Over to you.
Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, General Shukla, General Sharma, my old friend. Good evening, viewers. Today, again, we are discussing a very important subject, and like General Shankar said, from the point of view of how India sees it. What are the main lessons so far in this third week that we are looking at? There are four areas in which we can see and draw our lessons from. First is how do we protect our energy? We are importing 80 to 90% of our energy. How do we protect it? How can we be economically resilient to this huge buffeting winds, this tsunami that is heading towards us? Is our strategic alignment correct? Are our diplomats nimble-footed? What is India doing? We've not taken sides. People are accusing us on either side, saying, look, you should come out more out in the open. What lessons do we draw in this age of multilateralism when Europe has taken a backseat, when it's US and Israel up in front, Russia and China clearly on the other side? We are the only nation apart from China that is getting some tankers out from the Strait of Hormuz. That is one uh, positive that is emerging from this. And lastly, which I think General Shukla will take on in a much better fashion, is how do we prepare for such a war, this multi-domain, high intensity conflict that is taking place with powerful air resources that we demand. Land forces are not involved. I'm looking at, the idea of making some forays into South Korea. And apart from that, there is no land forces being involved in these products. But at the same time, the vectors taking place in this, how does India prepare for this high intensity conflict? Do we have the funds, or do we? It's the same question about bread, butter versus guns, bread and butter versus guns. What is the nature of our shock that we are facing today? As I told you, the 85% of our crude comes from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, Qatar, and these flows have been disrupted. The oil prices have shot up. It was 65 to $70 about 2 weeks ago, and today it's around 110 and climbing. So everything is up. All countries have raised the prices of petrol, diesel, and other products. India is still holding on, and we believe that this, if prices rise by 10%, there are estimates that I've read which says that will easily shave off 0.25% of your GDP growth. So if 80 to 90% of our imports are coming from there, how do we manage this? What are the risks? How can we have financial stability in this huge country of 1.2 billion people? And if the infrastructure starts with the pipes, like Trump said yesterday, I can hit the pipes anytime I want. Now, if the pipes get hit on both sides, what does it mean to the world and to the rest of us? All these things, India has to be drawing very, very important lessons from this, because this is a black swan event, which, although analysts and other people have written about, no one expected it to happen so soon, especially since Trump took a stand that I'm not dragging the US into wars. So, how does India play this out? Uh, Over to you, General Shankar, back to you and to my fellow panelists. We shall continue this discussion. Back to you.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir. I thought you made out some important points on energy security, economic security, preparation for war, and strategic alignment, the four pillars which you spoke of. Now, I'd request General B.K. Sharma, sir, over to you, your views on how do you assess the current situation from an Indian perspective.
Thank you, John Shankar. I'm very happy to be here for this discussion. At the outset, I would say that India has to be totally prepared to live in a chaotic world. This Central West Asia today has, I would become as the center of gravity of the global power shift. Ukraine is there, you have Taiwan, you have many other places, but I think the whole melting pot of the global geopolitics is here, where there's so many issues, there are so many actors, and there's so many drivers that are intersecting with one another. Therefore, West Asia today is no more a peripheral region for us. We can just take the solace of being thousands of kilometers away. It's a vital arc of our national security today. And how it impacts our national security, besides what General Gautam Moorthy brought out, is firstly your own multi vector engagement or strategic autonomy, which has been put to its extreme test here because of our divergent interests on one hand with Americans, then Israelis, then the very strategic location of Iran and our relations with monarchies of that region, right? How do you balance out your multi-vector engagement? Because if you take one side, or if you're seen to be taken to tilt towards one side, there is a cost to be paid on another side. So my final point in this particular issue is that multi-vector sounds very sweet, but unless you have the leverages to back it up, you will get trapped into situations which can cause you more strategic embarrassment that it can give you strategic dividends. So we have to think through this entire gambit of multi-vector engagement and do carry out a reality check of what additional leverages we need to navigate this multi-vector engagement. General Gautam Moorthy has already talked about energy security. It's not only the cost of a barrel of a dollar or LNG, it is also the transportation of that energy through your sea lanes of communication because everywhere you are a target. So, therefore, I would say your energy security is deeply intertwined with your maritime security, and you have to look at the entire thing as one compact and develop your capacities to see that you have a not only the diversification of energy, but also from wherever you get this energy, it reaches our soils. For example, today 22 odd of our ships containers are still stuck up in the Gulf of Hormuz. There was so much of excitement when these two of oil tankers came to the Indian shore, and we've not been given any exception. I think the only exceptions been made to Turkey, Pakistan, and one odd other country, China, and we still going by container taking permission from Iran. Third is 10 million diaspora, which is living there. It's their bread and butter, their livelihood, their security, their families back end here, the remittances that are coming up, the ideological, I would say the vulnerability of that diaspora with the kind of, alienation that is taking place and what kind of network that we need to create to see that we are able to evacuate them in a safe manner. Otherwise, it will have serious domestic ramifications. Then the economic warfare. If you have to really fulfill that, what you call is Viksit Bharat 2047, you have to grow at least at 9% for next 20 years if you have to close the gap. And I'm sure if your energy security is at risk, it is going to impact your industrialization, your productivity, and it will have long-term strategic consequences for India. Next, we are seeing now the multi-domain warfare. You see the kind of wars which are being fought between Israel, US, and Iran, and how Iran, as a Goliath, is making use of drones, cheap drones, worth a couple of thousands of dollars against very heavy, a very costly, missile system worth 5 millions of dollars. How this mix between the drones and the ballistic missiles vis-a-vis high-end platform by the other side, what is the asymmetry, what are the competitive advantages, what lessons we can learn for India as far as the Kulusio hybrid threat in the multi-domain warfare setting is concerned is to be seen. And last I would flag here is the strategic communication. Somehow, if you look at global south and many of the countries, somehow the very optics of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel and subsequently little bit of a dally-dallying of making certain statements, whether this was on decapitation strikes, on thing, how the world sees it. There is huge debate within our country. There's a huge debate in the region. There's a huge debate that India probably is not only practicing strategic ambiguity, it is perhaps a strategic passivity. How do we readdress, correct some of these narratives is itself a very big challenge that we have to look at.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir. I thought you brought out some very interesting points and important points regarding our diaspora, Viksit Bharat, multi-domain warfare, and the fact of our strategic ambiguity versus strategic passivity, right? And our strategic autonomy, which is at stress, right? We'll take this forward. All these issues are relevant in today, the way the battle and the war is progressing, and the way India is coming to the center of many things, right? And like you rightly said at the beginning, West Asia is very critical for India. It's critical for India for many purposes, including our food security, because a lot of our uh, fertilizers come from that part of the world, and we're not getting anything at this point. Right. Having said this, let's turn to General Raj Shukla to give his view as to what is important for India in this particular conflict. Over to you, General Shukla.
So, good evening, everyone. 4 to 5 points come to my mind. One is, while it may be Kalyug for the others, for a soldier, this is Satyug. I haven't seen a more wonderful time to be a soldier. So much of geopolitics and such really challenging questions, not only in geopolitics, but in the whole
You're,
strategic
you're,
military
you're
domain.
not loud enough. Can you adjust your volume, please?
Yeah, yeah, 1 minute, sir. Okay, can you hear me now, sir? If I
Yeah,
speak
now
a
you're
little
better.
louder.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I was saying that while it may be for Kalyug, for many other professions, for a soldier, this is Satyug. I haven't, in what I'm 63 now, seen such challenging geopolitical times and such great opportunity for, shall we say, intellect in strategic military affairs, where it is mattering. Admiral Karambir Singh once told me that when he met Henry Kissinger, Henry Kissinger told him that I hope geopolitics flows in the veins of your officers. So this is the time for military officers to seize this opportunity, understand this geopolitics, and see how it applies, how we can apply all these geopolitical currents to the peculiar Indian circumstance. I want to make one comment about the conflict in West Asia as it exists today. Now, this is an informed audience. We all know what has happened. But the two critical issues, in my view, is this that a regime, I first make one point about the Iranians and one point about the Americans. That a regime which was, built on its kind of this antagonism towards the United States, a 10 lakh strong IRGC, Besiege, and so on and so forth, which is so strong in terms of internal control, which was trying to project power beyond in the form of missiles, drones, and so on and so forth, should turn out to be so brittle from within. The point is that this regime, when the revolution took off, I am told it was 80-20. 80% of the population was pro regime, 20 was anti regime. Today it is not only 20-80. Now, if that is Western propaganda, it may be 30-70. It is not only unpopular, but it is so deeply penetrated that should really worry the Iranians. I mean, Mushtaba is hit once in the first strike, the second time when he's in the hospital, and you just have Ali Larajani and Soleimani, Ghulam Reza Soleimani being knocked off. If you are so badly penetrated, how can you stand up to the Americans? So it is really an internal factor which is bringing down this whole regime. It is battered. It is standing up to American might, but this must really worry them. As far as the Americans are concerned, I would like to make just one point. If we go back to Iraqi freedom, and we all were, I think, pretty young in our careers then, in 3 weeks, Donald Rumsfeld and Tommy Franks, they they captured Baghdad. Baghdad fell in 3 weeks. And when it felt that the Americans were simply going to roll over Iraq, they got into a decade long insurgency, which all the brilliance of patriots, etc., could not bring them out of. So 3 plus 10. Now, similarly, decapitation strikes, neutering of Iranian military capacities, the Americans have done pretty well. The American Israeli strategic military technological alliance has clicked very well. But now is the critical point. While Trump is very conscious that he will not get into boots on the ground, is he getting into an escalation trap at sea? Because if he is now going to resume flows in the Hormuz based on force, and it leads to committal of the 31 Marine Expeditionary Unit in Kirk Island, tanker escorts and so on and so forth, could it go horribly wrong at sea? The off ramping that Trump could have done so far, in fact, I would have advised him to quickly off ramp if he's not done it. And if he cannot do it successfully, not only he, but America will be greatly diminished. When he meets Z next time, and if he has to meet him after a compromise with Iran, that's the end of Donald Trump and his presidency. So I think that is how critically poised the conflict is. The third lesson is this. I say this is time to go to school. This is for India. We must go to school over Ukraine. The Americans have replicated the Shahed drones in the form of Lucas deployed in Central Command in 18 months. Where are the Indian replications of the Shahed drone when it is so game changing? It is so as game changing as to take on American military might. In the target rich GCC, it is the Shaheds which have worked. Where are our Shaheds? I will make one more point, pertaining to geopolitical karma. We'll all recall how Trump mocked Zelensky in the White House and said, Zelensky, you don't have the cards. Today, America is begging Ukraine to give them the counter drone MEROPs with all their drone hunting teams and so on. They're deploying in the GCC. Where is our MEROPs? The Indian version. There is still time. In the next 20, 18 months, 12 months, let us pledge to replicate the Shahed, which is not a piece of technological marvel, and replicate the counter drone system. I'm saying go to school over Ukraine in this sense. Let's not stop talking. The last point I would like to make is that in all these conflicts, the taxonomy of combat has shows us two trends. One is it is moving towards autonomy, and the second it is moving towards startups. We have Palmer Lucky turning out an AI-enabled combat aircraft unmanned for flight testing in 568 days. This bit of ANTA being turned out in 10 weeks, 10 years is a thing of the past. And we have the talent here. If we identify 10 startups in this whole business of technological innovation, we can replicate all these capacities. So that is the principal lesson to learn, in from Ukraine and all these conflicts. And the last 2 points that I would, or the last one point I would like to make is that the events of the last 5 to 6 years should drive home one point, that geopolitics and national security are extremely brutal, unforgiving. There is no substitute to combat lethal war winning capacities. Any spin that you give, anything that you do short of that, has disastrous consequences. So now that India is in the big league, let me also say this. I have no evidence, but my hunch is this targeting of Iris Dina was deliberate. It was a signal to the Indians that if you talk of net security provider, see what we can do to you. It was signaling to the Chinese that we've not only done Venezuela, we are doing West Asia and we are coming to you. This is, this whole MAGA, and there is a reason for this. The Chinese have been mocking the Americans that you are a power in decline. Here is Trump and the MAGA crowd saying that we are not declining. See what we did in Venezuela, see what we will do in West Asia, and we will come and challenge you. So I'm saying there is still time. Here, I and you, from the safety and comfort of our homes, are commenting on how the rest of the world is on fire. I dread that day when some commentator in London is commenting on how India is on fire. There is still time. Let us wake up. And so many of us have been making this call. Things are happening, but not at the rate and pace and scale that should happen. I think that is the principal lesson from these conflicts. That would be my opening remarks, and we could engage in detailed discussion subsequently.
Yep. Thanks a lot. There is still time. A lot is to be done. Miles to go before we can think that we are one of the great powers of this world. Right. I think very important points. Where is India's Shahed? I go completely with you, and I can tell a story about it where it got lost also. But that's for a different day. Geopolitics will be, driven by everyone. This is a time where everyone has to imbibe geopolitics. I dare say the way things are happening and the way things have been happening over the past 5 years, virtually geopolitics are being injected into everyone's veins, every military officer's veins. And I'd like to narrate a small incident or a discussion I had 3 days, 4 days back in FIDIV. I was speaking to officers of FIDIV, some officers of FIDIV, and I was pleasantly surprised at the level of awareness in Tenga Valley about what's going on. And I was also pleasantly surprised at the quest for technology which is there, and how we need to inject many things at speed. Now we need to discuss if there is inquisitiveness and awareness at the ground, and if there is intent at the top, why are these two things not meeting? So that what General Raj Shukla says about Shahed drones coming in bulk are not coming. And that's something, a certain amount of introspection we have to do. With this, right, let me come to the second round of today's discussion. What should India learn from all this? We said what are Indian interests in all this? What is India going to look at? But what should we learn? What should India say? Okay, this is what are major lessons for me in each of these conflicts, from the Americans, from the Iranians, and from the rest of the world, and seeing where we have to position ourselves. What should we learn? General Gautam Moorthy, sir, over to you.
Thank you, General Shankar, and it was fascinating listening to General Sharma and General Raj Shukla. What should we learn? First and foremost, again, I go back to we need to look at our strategic petroleum reserves. We can't have it in days, we need to build it up in months. We need dedicated strategic stocks. Let's first look at where it is hitting us today. It is hitting us. We all know the LPG crisis and what the government is doing to solve it. We don't want it to move into petrol stations. We don't want it to move into a fertilizer plants. We don't want it to move it all over because our crops will be affected. Everything will be. So first and foremost, we need to diversify our supplies. I do not think Trump can again go back and tell us not to buy from Russia. I mean, that's a call that the government has to take. We have to continue to buy from Russia, and we need to increase our quantities. But the issue is that everyone will be going to Russia at this moment in time. Look at Latin America, look at West Africa, Nigeria. Increase, diversify our sources of supply. Landed costs will be high, costs will go up, but at least you have the reserves with you. That I think is the first and most important lesson that we need to try derive from this. Then, what about our domestic gas production? What are the alternatives? How do we not be so vulnerable to the Gulf gas and ammonia supply? Also, we need to look at renewables. We need to look at our storage. We need to strengthen our monetary buffers. We need to build contingency funds, fuel subsidies. There is a whole gamut of issues that we need to tackle in as a nation. And most important is maritime security. General Raj Shukla very clearly brought it out. There have been articles all floating around which all of us have read saying, do we need a surface fleet? Do we need a navy? If the US Navy is not able to stop the so-called blockade, although Iran has not said it's blockaded the Hormuz, but we know what is going on. So the questions are being raised about our own navy. But don't we require it? Why do we have to use this crisis? Don't we have to use this crisis to learn very useful lessons? And how do we align our commercial strategy with our maritime strategy insofar as the oceans are concerned? This is again, I think, a very important lesson. The third is we have seen how this conflict has encouraged preventive attacks on nuclear programs. We saw it last year in June, and again we are seeing it now. We'll also see accelerated. I mean, people are quoting North Korea and saying, why isn't Trump tackling North Korea? And if North Korea could be nuclearized, there's debate going on in Iran, which I have, seen on the net, on social media, which says that the Ayatollah should have accelerated our program. We wouldn't have been in this state today. Now, India has been opposing regime change, this kind of war. We look at negotiated settlements. We're looking at our on this, not only on moral grounds, but we are not. It is absolutely amoral to, in my point of view, to strike at the targeted leadership. But we are not discussing morality here. We are discussing what is actually happening. So we have to learn a lesson from that. Then, how do we be uh, actively neutral in this? India, I believe, should immediately push for a ceasefire among the belligerents. We must leverage what we have with all, like you said, with the Gulf states, with the US, whatever. We do have some leverage being the strategic partner with Iran and, of course, with Israel to say that, look, enough is enough. The world wants you to stop. So, how do we balance all this? These are huge lessons that we need to learn. And militarily, there are, of course, we have to prepare uh, for understanding what are preemptive strikes, what are multi-domain operations. Our theater commands haven't taken root as yet. And we are looking at multi-domain operations, combined cyber command, space command, drones, precision strikes, offensive intelligence. What are our red lines? How do we look at our infrastructure out in the open, despite Iran having dug deep, their infrastructure has been hit. So, what do we need to do? General Shankar has often spoken about, and viewers will know it, about long range strikes, about rocket forces, about missile forces. We've got to look at this, and General Shukla has mentioned about drones. So, these are the kind of things. And General Shukla brought out a very interesting point. Today, the fact is that Israel is continuing to target the leadership of Iran says something about how deeply penetrated and how deeply unpopular Iran's leadership is. We are seeing that. Also, we've got a huge population of ours in the Gulf. We have done evacuations before. We are still doing evacuations from Iran. God forbid, a time will come for evacuations from the Gulf. How do we do it? How do we manage this? This is another lesson that we need to learn. This is where will our Navy come in and how would it be deployed for such operations? So these are some of the things. I will leave the military lessons and to General Sharma and General Shukla. Back to you, General Shankar.
Thanks a lot, sir. A lot of sense in what you have spoken. I now request General B.K. Sharma, sir, your views and what has India learned and what should India learn going ahead. Over to you, sir.
I think the first lesson that I would learn is that India's rise per se will not be palatable to even to our strategic allies, so to say, strategic partner. And we have seen from time to time when you do not foot the bill or their strategic interests, they find ways and means to needle you. So we have to create a national resilience and enough national agility to find these kind of forces. And in that, I would say one of the most important aspect here is in the cognitive domain. Today, you look at Iran. What is susceptibility of Iran? The whole regime change ball game was actually to drive a wedge within the societal fault lines. Whether it was the civil society aspirations at one hand, whether it was bringing in Azeris, whether it was Kurds, or whether it is Baloch factor, right? Same thing is the Sunni Shia divide or the Persian Arab divide being played out in a very subtle manner in this entire region which is being talked about. We, as a multicultural, multi ethnic society, are quite susceptible to these kind of pressures, these kind of tinkering. So we had to develop that resilience against this. One more important factor here is though we've been talking about Atmanirbharta, and as General Shukla, and you've also been alluding to it from time to time, but it is more of a talk than actually the effort that is going into it to get certain output, tangible output in the timelines in which it is required. A case in point is what the Journal Shukla brought in about Shahed drone. Though we are talking about Sheshnag today, we're talking about KL, we're talking about other drones, but we lost lot of time. And you look at your adversaries, both China and the kind of drones that Pakistan is going to get from different countries, including Turkey. So therefore, this R&D and this defense production, the entire ecosystem requires a de novo look. And that brings us to skilling. Still, our skilling of incubation centers, other areas, it's still very low. It's mostly in the hands of government and industry partners and other innovators. They're not getting the kind of encouragement that they deserve in the R&D. Then is the whole de novo look at your entire national security planning process. Still, our assessments are very, very predictable. They are silo based, they are linear. We still are suffering from cognitive biases. There are mental maps, there are group thinking. Unless you have a multi domain, what you can say, domain expertise, cross domain expertise brought to bear and do some of these assessments and futuristic thinking. Like he talked about black swan. I won't call West Asia as a black swan. It was more of a grey rhino event. We were already seeing, writing on the wall, but we're just keeping our eyes closed. So, so we have to be prepared for future strategic shocks. And we know that our neighborhood is not in a very good shape. There are big powers which are indulging in a great game here to destabilize our neighborhood and perhaps retard our own growth. So, therefore, I think we have to take a very holistic view and create constituencies, create entities which are able to take a long term strategic view of India's national interests and how to promote those national interests in a very, very turbulent world which is likely to remain for the times to come. I rest my case there.
Thanks a lot, sir. General Raj Shukla, your views on what really are the lessons we take home in this war?
So the first point I'd like to make is that, in the international order, there is no morality. It is such disorder that the only arbiter is power. It can be moralistic power and it can be power that is disdainful of morality. So, if India's whole experiment is moralistic power, if we have to protect our morals and our values, we must invest in the instrument of force to protect those values. Swami Vivekananda put it very eloquently. He said that the world is a gymnasium where nations come to make themselves strong. In India, we hear only the Vasudev Kutumbakam narrative. We don't hear this other narrative of Swami Vivekananda. So we must first concede that power matters. Power is the only arbiter in an international system where there is chaos. Donald Trump respects only power. So we must focus on developing power. That's the first point I make. The second point, I'll recall General Krishnaswamy Sundarji, who said that, while it is okay for the politician and the diplomat to dwell ad lib on intentions, the military must always focus on capacities. Because while capacities take generations to create, intentions change overnight. So we are in that phase of our strategic evolution where we just need to put our heads down and build capacities, capacities, capacities. Deterrence, deterrence, deterrence. Only thing that the startups need from us is orders, orders, and orders. उनमें बड़ी खूबी हैं. They are very talented. They need no meherbani from you. Just give them those orders. So it is, these simple things. The third point I would like to make is that, national security is an H1 game. It is a game of high quality talent, of risk taking, of technological innovation of the highest order. The generals of Ukraine are Elon Musk, Pamalaki, Alex Karp, near geniuses. Unfortunately, in India, we have fooled ourselves into this L1 paradigm. Ideological obsession with costs, where it is penny wise, pound foolish, a set of bureaucracies, military and civil, which don't take any risks. Now, this whole game has to change. L1 has become a disease. We have to abandon L1 and get to H1. Let's look at Sudarshan Chakra. We need it so desperately. What is it? It is such a simple set of capabilities. If the Ukrainians have devised these, AI enabled, dronery driven frontiers where the digital killing webs can bring down adversary targets in 6 to 7 minutes, why can't we replicate it along the LACLC? Why can't we supplement that with the Shahed drones, the counter drone systems? टैलेंट है, पैसा है, सब कुछ है हमारे पास. अगर हम ये बंद कर दें ये L1 nonsense, we just graduate to H1. We link it with some upgradations in our AD and a drone missile force. We'll have a Sudarshan Chakra. India needs to move beyond its LAC LC obsession. We need to take our gaze beyond our LAC LC in terms of power projection, so on and so forth. Today, we must very consciously abandon jingoism and hawkishness for muscularity. Should we invest in power projection across Malacca, or should we keep going on to this POK rent? I think it is power projection across Malacca. I'm saying Taiwan concerns India. The day China breaks out of Taiwan, it will American Chinese naval power will land up on the doors of Los Angeles as also in the IOR. So we need to project power across Malacca. 2 years from before, if I had ever said these things, I would be accused of jingoism, about being theoretical, so on and so forth. It is not so. If we don't invest in power projection capacities today, 10 years from now, India will be of little value. So I'm saying we need to make all these kind of changes. And if we do this, India will really be a great power that it is destined to be. And the last point that I want to make is this. Over the last 8 to 9 years, civil, scientific, administrative bureaucracies have learned a new language. That is, keep talking, invest in spin without capacities. The only thing that matters in the power structure is the lethal war-winning capacities we can give to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, our fleets and formation. So let's stop, talking of AON, technology demonstrator, this Republic Day model and that. If we are serious about, say, interception of enemy missiles, let whatever that system is, let it be deployed in the field. So the true value of whatever we say must must emerge in the hands of our soldiers, sailor, airmen. I'm just giving you an example. I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I wish to be corrected. If the DRDO talks of a stealth platform which it is developing, I welcome that stealth platform. I welcome all investments in it, but please make sure it happens by 2028 and it is delivered to the fleets and formations. It cannot constantly be an idea which is happening in Delhi and its files. In fact, the last point I would want to make is this, that it took somebody of the common sense of Donald Trump who said, why should the next generation aircraft be delivered in 10 years? It is either delivered in three or it is not delivered at all. So this delivery, the acceptance of realism is what India needs, because we really are in a situation of great strategic challenges. No spin will work, no stories will work. We need lethal war winning capacities. And if we do that, I have no doubt that this Vikasit Bharat dream will get secured by a Surakshit Bharat.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all of you for your views. What comes out very strongly from all your ideas over the two rounds which we've had discussion is Look, we are in a situation where war can happen anytime. If you take this current, war which is happening, as USA was negotiating with Iran through Oman, and all of us thought war won't happen. The very next day, the bombardment started and the war happened. So there's no guarantee that war will not happen anytime. And we have two combustible neighbors, adversaries, who can get into a conflict mode at any given time. And more so with a unstable country like Pakistan, who for sheer diversion can come this side instead of going to Afghanistan. So we have to be alert on that. And this, if you take this paradigm and take into account that, look, we are an aspiring nation. We want to be at the high table. We want to be one of the great powers. We want to grow to be the third biggest economy in the world. And we are well on our way. But the contradiction in all this growth and our security environment is, are we prepared for that? Are we prepared for the role which we have to play in this world as the third largest economy? And if you see this uh, particular conflict, BK Sharma did speak that people are talking of strategic passivity or strategic ambiguity. Vis-a-vis, someone says, "Okay, look, it is India who has to solve these problems." It's like uh, the Finnish president. He said, "I would like Prime Minister Modi to start, intervening and mediating." Are we in a position to do all that? If we are not in a position to do all that, it is only for one simple fact that your economic might is not balanced by your military might, as much as it may be. As much as we have a very strong army, navy, and air force, but today we are the contradiction which we face in my which I get from all of you is that there's a lag in our military might. The rest of the things are there. And that comes down to one thing which General Raj Shukla was eloquently pointing out is the fact that we don't have politico military, what shall I say, synergy, right? You call it synergy, you call it fusion, you call it cooperation with that semantics. It's the politico military synergy one to one. Why? And traditionally in our country, it's a bureaucrat who's put himself in between, right? And that is something which we have to overcome. This is our internal problem. If we can overcome this, the issue, I'll come back to you, Raj. The issue of what General Raj Shukla was talking of H1, L1, yeah, all that will get resolved. Our problems are not that we don't have the scientific temper. Our problems are not that we don't have the capacity to build capacities. Our problem is more procedural, more structural in the politico-military domain. And I put it in politico-military domain because in all of the domains in our society, we have this synergy. And that is why economically we are progressing at the rate at which we are this thing. It doesn't matter whether we progress at 9% or 8%, as General Sharma did point out. But as far as we are the fastest growing economy, we'll be there where we have to be, right? It's a matter, ultimately, growth is a matter of relativity also, right? I thought we had a fantastic discussion. General Raj Shukla has another point to make. Over to you, Raj. And anyone else has got a point to contribute, we still have time. We'll take it on. Over to you, Raj. It's open house.
So, as you were saying, this thought came across my
Your
mind.
voice, you're a bit
Yeah, as you were saying, these thoughts came to my mind. Look at the problems. Iran has got an ideological military where its professional military, the Artish, doesn't have quite a voice. So the IRGC is very good in repression and the other kind of stuff, but it is not so professionally sound. It makes this huge mistake of assembling 50 top political leaders in an overground compound where it was very obvious that they will be targeted. Very unprofessional. Look at Xi's problem. He's stuck with 100 generals who don't want to do Taiwan but who are obsessed with corruption. Look at Pakistan. It has a problem of another kind. India is in this great space where these questions of civil military control have been settled. You have such a professional military, such a professional military, such a competent military. If we can just sort out these other issues which I may just say were created by design so that this professional military doesn't bloom. If you remove these issues, we have all the solutions that the other nations don't have. Now, that is the whole point I wish to make. This L1 has to go in favor of H1. We have such other great talent of our startups. They are just looking for your orders. So I'm saying that if we can just remove the bureaucratic cobwebs, everything is in place for India to attain its place, its rightful place in the Committee of Nations. So that is the
Thanks,
real point.
thanks for your last
Yes.
comment. Jal BK sir, you're over to you.
See, see, we very sort of aptly talked about, what matters is your military power to defend your national interests. What really worries me, after we had put a roadmap for theaterization 5 years ago, why are we still groping in the dark? If the political authority could appoint a CDS and also appoint him as the secretary of DMA, what is stopping that political authority to give a timeline to the armed forces to produce, the theaterization, or at least one model of theaterization? This is a worrisome. Why we still don't have a national security strategy, which could very well be in the classified domain. Don't put it in the public domain. Why you still don't have a strategy for multi-domain warfare? Where is this inertia residing? Unless you have a roadmap, you have certain guidelines, will always be groping in the dark, and it would be more of a knee-jerk reaction crisis management than actually shaping the strategic environment even for the use of force. This is something which we require to really, we need to debate this, because unless we are able to cross this hump, we'll always be groping in the dark and will not be able to get the optimum results that are very much required in our context.
Yeah, it comes back to the three words which I keep using: politico-military fusion. So, General Murthy, so your comments on what about
I
it?
can't help but agree with my fellow panelists and with you. There is this document that has come out in open domain, Defense Forces Vision 2047, the roadmap, the whole lot of recommendations made there. I'm not going to list them out now. There are concrete recommendations made. In fact, General Huda has written a good article on it in today's Hindustan Times. I would urge your viewers to go through it. But yes, we have to get over this procedural hurdle that we have caught ourselves in. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill over here, who said, of all the bureaucracies, the military bureaucracy is the worst. I'm sorry to sound a little negative on this account, but the fact remains is that we need to get our act together, the three services, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, before we push ahead for in these various domains that we've discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll I'll put a poser at the end to all three of you. You know, we had the 12-day war. In between, then we had Opsindur, or 4-day war. It's a war, whether small, big, whatever it is. And now you're having this huge war which is on your doorstep. In between, the Ukraine war keeps flaring up and down. And you also had Venezuela, a 20-hour operation of high this thing. And we've always patted our backs on Opsindur. However successful Opsindur may have been, is it time for us, taking the experience of the other conflicts which have happened around us, is it time for us to stop patting our backs on Opsindur and rework our whole story? Especially in the realm of theaterization and synergy and political military fusion and enhanced uh, capacity building consistent with modern warfare. Not that you'll get the Anka after 50 years. If you get after 50 years, you're again one generation back. I like your views on this because we need to be candid, and I'm sure someone interested will be seeing our program. It's good to be candid before the event and after the event. That's the way I look at it. General Gautam Moorthy, sir, all yours.
You have actually focused on the right issues. While uh, the political leadership may take uh, their gains from Op Sindoor, their lessons learned, we as a military need to learn our lessons from Op Sindoor and the quickly developed other operations that we have seen in the recent past. We cannot rest on our laurels. Yes, our AD was very successful in those 84 hours. What have we done to enhance it to ensure that we are able to stop incoming missiles and drones? A simple question like General Shukla alluded to it right in the beginning of his talk. What are the other lessons we're learning? Was there good enough synergy? Have we honestly addressed it? Look, you and I really do not know because there are some issues that have not come out in the open. But I'm just hoping that all this has happened, that we are learning the right lessons. And the first proof of this would be the theaterization or some kind of synergy that comes out, that is spoken about, and a press release to the effect is comes out. Otherwise, we will not come to. I mean, you can hear rumors and discussions, but let's leave it out. Let something concrete emerge. That's what I'd like to say. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Raj Shukla, your views on it. After all, you had a conversation with the air chief in Mao, if you remember last year, and dare say again we might be having it next week in Bangalore on this same footing. Your views on this? What I've just said, the poser.
So you're absolutely right, sir. Op Sindoor, we did well
I can't
against
hear you.
Pakistan.
Can't hear you well.
Op Sindoor, we did well against Pakistan. But Pakistan is hardly a metric to measure India's national security capacities. It's a mere pest. The threat is China. And there we need to realistically evaluate, where we stand. And I've been making this point that we really need to see. I mean, look at what is happening to Iran, what has happened to so many other countries in the face of this drone missile threat. Now, China, from all accounts, unless they turn out to be some social media fluff, their rocket force is an organization which is extremely sophisticated. You know, this sensor shooter mix across 7 domains, hypersonics, all that kind of stuff. So we certainly have to, relook at where our capacities stand. And honestly, I think we have a lot to improve upon. See, in India, the central issue is what? It is status quoism versus change. Now, look at what is happening to these status quo forces. Look at HAL. You have been kept out of the AMCA bid, which is what the next generation fighter. It is humiliating for the HAL, all because you couldn't change. Look at what happened to the ordnance factory boards. Adani recently has created this next generation ammunition facility of missiles, small arms, all that kind of stuff, R&D enabled, fourth generation technologies. Why couldn't you do it? You would have been in the business. So the quarrel really is not about PSUs and the others. It is about the PSUs who refuse to change. And the last point I would like to make is this. I think Jan Murthy alluded to it. We've had two CDSs now. What has happened? People will ask. Not even theater commands, which were a concept of the 90s. We were supposed to be looking at digital theaters, algorithmic warfare. Now, if we are as lazy as the rest, what right do we have to preach anybody else? And these questions today will be asked. They are already being asked. जैसे कहते हैं दबी जुबान में पूछ रहे हैं. अब लोग खुल के पूछेंगे. So what I am saying is that there is no scope for complacency. There is no time for status quoism. The world is so dynamic. You simply have to deliver. And that holds for DRDO, the military, the PSUs. If the PSUs start doing better than startups, they will win it. It is not against startups and PSUs. It is
Yes,
about
yes,
delivery. That is the whole
correct.
point, even within our own
Absolutely.
military. So I'm saying there is wisdom in changing. Status quoism is a disease. L1 is a disease. Get out of that trap. If we do it, not only will the Indian military be great, it is a very professional military, well regarded, but the Indian nation will be great. I just don't understand where these forces for status quoism come from. What is the wisdom in status quoism when all the evidence shows that those who change will profit?
Thank you. General Sharma, sir, your views on this.
See, I'm of the opinion that professional militaries should not talk about things beyond a point every day, day in and day out. Sindhur happened, and there were pluses and minuses in Sindhur. It's not that everything was hunky dory. Particularly if you take example of the very first night, you know how the whole sort of the rug was pulled under our feet, and whatever you call about the kill chain philosophy, there was definitely in the multi-domain warfare in favor of Pakistanis, and they leveraged it beautifully well in their algorithm warfare and the narrative warfare, right? And subsequently, we see that it was actually, we did not have high end systems actually at play. What we've seen in Ukraine war or what we are seeing in West Asia, these were some low level kind of drones. You had BrahMos, they had also some systems, they had HQ9, right, which failed. But now let's look at the future. The lessons that we draw from Sindoor are relevant for the future. That if this kind of a warfare has to be prosecuted over a period of time, what next? What is your aerospace balance? Particularly when there is a supply, dedicated supply line from China, from Turkey coming to Pakistan, and we have multiple inventories to deal with, right? What is your maritime balance with the eight frigates and certain AIP capable submarines coming to now to Pakistanis, right? How does the AI and the entire aero domain awareness changes the whole complexion? Where are we? What is our satellite revisit? What is your air defense capability? You have maybe three what you call S-400, and that too we had perhaps relocated and redistributed, redeployed some of these. If there is the two-front dilemma with your 29 squadrons today, you right, where are you with Pakistan 26 squadrons and whatever this thing? What about the rocket force? What about the information support force? Right? What about the intelligence warfare that the Chinese are now actually, and even Pakistanis are going to be beneficiary? So you have to do a hardcore military balance, long-term military balance, actually rehearse and war game these exercises in your maybe higher command, JOCAP, other places, and then draw lessons out of it, and then build capacities rather than create a hype about it and keep patting your back day in and day out. Chinese don't do it. Israelis don't do it. They're extremely surgical, clinical in carrying out, post campaign kind of an analysis and draw lesson. I think high time that India we emulate some of these lessons and put our act together.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. The main thing is we have to go past our own Opsindur syndrome. Let's move on from there and move on to something better, and move on to a better, uh, you know, uh, better compact of politico-military synergy to take this whole story forward. After all, this is a thing about learning lessons from the war. It's not learning lessons from global economy. So that's why we focus more on the war part of it. I'll take a few questions which have come up, right? And dare say interesting ones. To start with, very happy to everyone, friends. My in-laws are using induction grills, which can have dual uses. Building capacity to scale from buying CNC machines to pick and place machines can all have other uses. Uh, Gautam sir, your take.
Dual use technologies have always been the hallmark. In fact, it drove the industrialization in the US, the Second World War, between the First and the Second World War. And the Second World War gave a great impetus. There are hundreds of examples of dual use technologies, and I'm sure our scientists and our military planners are looking into this.
Yeah. Anything to add, General Sharma, sir?
Yes, I totally agree with you. The future is of dual use technologies because that brings in the scale. Because if you have to, invest into R&D and profitability, then it's the dual use technology, and that is the trend world over, and we have to imbibe that trend ourselves.
Thank you. Next question. Thanks. Great insight from esteemed guest. My ill-informed opinion. We lack expeditionary capability, amphibious forces, and strategic lift. That's not an ill-informed opinion. That's a very well-informed opinion. I must tell you that, Purohit. Magazine depth and industrial capacity must align with allies. Move towards arsenal state strategy. General Sharma, sir, your view, and we'll take both views. Yeah.
See, we have to be very, very pragmatic in what kind of capabilities we want to develop. For example, I totally agree with you that the question that a strategic lift capability is still, something which is very inadequate. Particularly, the kind of multiple theater in which we have to operate and shift forces from one theater to another. Strategic lift capability is extremely important. So is our maritime capabilities. But as far as your expeditionary forces are concerned, unless we are able to meet this hollowness which is staring us in the eyes, it would be at this juncture premature to think something beyond Malacca, which General Shukla has been talking about. You have two island territories. You have Lakshadweep on one side, Andaman on this side. Are we making, optimum use of these strategic islands for the force projection? If you're able to dominate up to, say, Strait of Malacca and the three, what you call is these lines, you have the 6-degree channel, you have the 9-degree channel, you have the 10-degree channel, you have some of the states to which have become today the most contentious issue. Yes, force projection has to be limited, confined first to Indian Ocean region, consolidate your position here, and then talk about playing around with others' problems.
Yeah, Raj, I think this is a thing which is, to take off after your heart. Whoever Anukul Purohit says, look, let me repeat it. We lack expeditionary capability, amphibious forces, and strategic lift. Magazine depth and industrial capacity must align with allies. Move towards arsenal straight strategy. Your views.
So I agree entirely with Anukul. You see, the problem is should not be any shortfalls in our thinking. We must think big. They must Such big thinking must also always be constrained within the limits of practicality. But the reverse is dangerous. I'll give you an example. I was a brigadier in the MO Directorate about 10 years back when we were talking of weaponized drones. And we made two, three presentations to the then chief, who went to the National Security Advisor and came back and told us that India doesn't do this kind of stuff. We don't weaponize drones. Today, just take that decision in hindsight. Was it not extraordinarily, shall I say, wrong? All drones, unmanned systems are lethal. Now, when we say this, India doesn't do this kind of stuff, firstly, it is untrue. Secondly, it is ill informed. When you say India doesn't do expeditionary, it is a pack of nonsense. What was the Ashwamedh Yag? So, if we say that India is expeditionary, we must project power, but presently we have some limitations. I would agree with General Shah. But if you're the third largest, third most comprehensive in terms of national power, and you are the fourth largest economy, and you still keep parroting this, it is not wise. Admiral Arun Prakash, when he took over as CNC of the ANC, said this is an aircraft carrier at sea which must protect power across the Malacca. There is nothing wrong in thinking grand, in thinking big. It must of course, be circumscribed by current realities. Let me make one last point. Look at this whole business of strategic autonomy. Now, if strategic autonomy is to leverage everybody in the system to your own self interest, it is very wise. But if strategic autonomy also is about capacities, if you don't have meaningful capacities, you cannot be strategically autonomous. So this whole argument has to be seen through. And in that context, may I make this last point? America has Israel. Even mighty America couldn't do epic fury without the innovation of Israel. Israel has America. Pakistan has China. If we say that is a matter of principle, we need nobody, it is empty boast. We have to say that we wish to be strategically autonomous because of all the wise reasons, but we need to do some technology partnerships. They could be with
Absolutely.
Israel, they could be with USA, they could be Russia. So I'm against this moralizing of all our foreign policy, shall we say, mantras. We don't do weaponized drones. Sorry, who said it? Who are you to say it? This is not the Indian reality. So this kind of moralizing is the only thing I'm against. I'm all for pragmatism, and in that sense, everything that Anukul says is right. Today, 31 MEU, if it comes and does an amphibious assault on Karg Island and it turns out to be successful, it is good. We should have all kinds of capacities. I mean, there were a debate 8 years or 5 years back that aircraft carriers are absolutely vulnerable. Really, they are at the base of American power projection in Venezuela, Middle East. This world is a large ocean, and 11 aircraft carriers are too few. So we have to see, we have to separate the mirage from the reality. We can say that India needs all this, current resources don't allow us. But to say that we don't do this, I mean, who is this we? That is the only thing I'm against of, because once you take that decision, it hampers your capacity building.
Thank you. But I'll just put in a word here. I think we've gone past the stage when we are uh, moralizing about what our capacity should be. Happily, very happily, that is in the past, and we have to look forward. And it's in looking forward that there are still a lot of wrinkles which we have spoken of, which we have to talk of. One more interesting question. Look, General Gautam Moorthy, sir, please take it on. IAF chief is against theaterization, maybe because he believes Air Force will have a reduced budget. What's Navy's stand on theaterization? Okay, let's talk a couple of minutes on this.
I,
Look, this is what the public wants. Look, people are paying you to ask these questions, and if we are not honest about it, well, that's where we'll start faltering at the outset. Your view, sir.
see, see, again, it is, as I said, service related. Each service have the views in pro and against theaterization. The Air Force has said a point in time that whatever you do, do it to improve the current system. There's an old American adage which says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So their point of view is that it worked so well during Sindoor, our air defense, and everything worked well, so why are we fixing it? But we know as things have come out, there are issues, there have been issues. General B.K. Sharma alluded to it. But we need someone to take a call. Theaterization in America also wasn't happening. It was a political call. A political call has to be taken. You cannot expect the three services to come to an agreement, some basic agreement, yes, but beyond that, the call has to be political. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Your view, sir. We'll
Yeah.
take this because I think all three of you have to weigh in.
See, this theaterization in the Indian context, we have to see from a perspective of limited resources and competing priorities, right? And then each service has its own unique character, and they don't want that to let go. For example, I've been into these discussions, and we've been strategically gaming these scenarios at USI. Previous Air Force, I think he had agreed on in general about a roadmap for the theaterization. Then Sindoor happened, and then Air Force had its own sort of approach. We were together at Samavad in all three of us. Now, at the moment, the Air Force main opposition is that with 29 squadron, if you further distribute Air Force components into penny packets to the theaters, and then we lose the flexibility of its application. That is, I think, one of their concerns, whether it is legitimate or not. I'm not qualified, but I am very certain there is an answer to this. That I think this particular argument should not actually derail the whole process of theaterization. There are ways and means we can find out, and allocation of reserves and how much you need. So I think this is more of a mental block than anything else. As far as Navy is concerned, Navy is also, I think, they're a little more nimble-footed. On one hand, they talk about Peninsular Command, but there is ambiguity. What is the status of Andaman and Nicobar Command? Right? Why should it be remain unique? Whereas it is actually at the center of Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal and have a very important role to play. So there is a little bit of a disquiet on that. As far as sharing of AD resources between Army and Air Force, your whole CNR system, there are problems. There are problems about drone ownership, standardizing the inventory. There are problems about new generation platforms. So all this, I think, requires a dialogue. And I think what was missing was when the previous CDS took over, probably he went overboard without too much of consultation with the three services. He went first to the media, announced it, put it in the public domain. It created sort of a lot of debate. And I think this CDS has been able to have a bottoms up approach. But in the process, the whole endeavor is getting actually stymied. It is getting totally, is moving at a snail's pace, which is not for the good of the country in the light of what we are seeing in Ukraine, West Asia, and what probably could come up in Taiwan, or perhaps tomorrow both LC and LOC gets actually activated. With these 18 commands, are we able to put together a sustained, cohesive military campaign? I have my doubts about.
Raj, your view.
I'm very clear that theaterization should have happened 30 years back. All the excuses that are being put out are just excuses. So if the assets are less, let me tell you how this started. The the army was the largest force. The Air Force was given the same number of commands as the army as a CMR tool. The Air Force went along with the bureaucracy and said that we need to equal the army in every step. And the bureaucracy was very interested because it helped to keep the power of the army in check. It had got nothing to do with operational outcomes. So, if assets are less, why do you have as many CNCs as the army has? There is just no argument to this. So the real point is this, and I've been making this point for pretty long. The chief of defense staff must sit on the boards of all three stars. The day he sits on the boards of three stars, many of these arguments will vanish. I have known Air Force chiefs personally, many Air Force officers who, off the record, will tell me that theaterization needs to be done. But then they will go and take an institutional stand. Is the Air Force chief, does he have a right to take such a stand? Of course he does. But that right of his to take a stand has to be, shall I say, examined in the light of larger national security interests. And the final arbiter is not the Air Force chief, just as it cannot be the army chief. It has to be the chief of defense staff that is why he was anointed with the backing of the political class. And the point of all this is that all these stands that we take, what are their outcomes on this poor soldier, sailor, airman in the field? Barry Goldwater Nichols was extremely unpopular with the admirals and the lieutenant generals, but it was extremely popular in terms of operational outcomes with the soldiers, sailors, airmen in the field. If the Air Force wants assets, certainly they must have 114 Rafales. They must have stealth. But that cannot become an argument to come in the way of larger national security reform. And if we are going to take such stands, then what right do we have to preach to the DRDO to reform? What right do we have to preach to the HAL to reform? So once again, I go back to the H1 argument. it has to be highest common factor and not lowest common multiple. Because if you succumb to the LCM route, there are no end to all these kind of excuses. In fact, if I was the Air Force chief, I would have said theaterization, but also digital theaters. Let us connect, let us enable the northern theater in terms of AI. That should be the forward looking argument and not be stuck in the paradigm of the 80s. And by the way, I'm not sure that that is the current stand of the Air Force chief, because in a particular conversations that I've had with him and his predecessor, they have said, no, we want theaterization with a few caveats here and there. So I really don't know what the reality is. But in sum, any change, I'm for it. Any kind
Yeah,
of statuism, in my view, is against the national security interest.
yeah. Thanks a lot. I'll just add one point to this whole story, and this is very fundamental. When the prime minister of a nation tells the nation from the ramparts of Red Fort that we're going to have a chief of defense staff, and the chief of defense staff is given an instruction that within 3 years you will have theater command, joint theater commands, and it doesn't happen. It speaks very, very, gravely about how we function. The issue of politico-military strategy, politico-military fusion, politico-military synergy, call it what you want. And that has been violated for far too long now, and we need to set it right. I'll not go over all the arguments on theaterization once again, but I think if there's one major lesson we take from this war which is going on, if theaterization doesn't come, we are on the cusp of a failure. And I'll end it there. Right. With this, I thought we had a tremendous discussion, all valuable points and great points, forward-looking points. And I'd like to request General Gautam Moorthy, sir, a vote of thanks, and we'll close.
I think, yes, I completely second you. We've had a wonderful discussion. We have had such refreshing views from General Raj Shukla and General B.K. Sharma. Of course, General Shankar also comes out with his original views. We've had some very interesting questions. Unfortunately, many of them couldn't be taken because of lack of time, but I guess you have got the gist of what we were trying to say, that India has to learn a lot of lessons from what is going on. We will have another session at some other time because, like we discussed at the last time, this war is not ending in a hurry. At least as I see it, it will last out this month. I hope it
We'll see next
doesn't
month.
spill over to the next month. Thank you. Good night and Jai Hind to everyone.
Jai Hind to everyone,
Thank you.
sirs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bihar.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Thanks,
night, sir.
Raj.
Good night.